Good evening, everybody. My name is Marcel Groen. I'm an attorney, and I'm an attorney for this particular matter for the developer that wants to talk to you. We want to talk to you about what we're trying to do. First of all, I want to thank you for being here so that we can answer any questions or concerns that you might have. The way I do this personally is I don't want to give you any stuff that's not real. We're going to try to be as accommodating as possible. Sometimes you can't, but we'll be honest with you. I think you'll find that the project that we're suggesting is will be a tremendous asset to the neighborhood and to the community at large. You may have some issues, and we'll try to address them as well. There is a sign-in sheet that I think is floating around, and we would merely request, if you don't mind, you don't have to, but if you could sign up and give us some methodology that we can communicate with you. Some of you will have questions that we can't answer tonight, and we'll try to get answers to them as well. Okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of the principals, Jeff Goldstein, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the project. By the way, before I get any further, I want to thank Commissioner Sanchez, who's here, who may want to say a few words, for putting this together.
Just one point, too, I wanted to make. We are recording this because there were people that, are away for summer vacation. So this will be made available for broadcast on the township television channel. So I should have told you that before you started, in case you.
Excuse me.
But thank you, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. And to that point, it's important to use a microphone when you are commenting, so we'll pass it around and figure it out, so that way it gets into the township audio and that we can hear it. And wanted to thank these gentlemen for coming out and doing this too, because this is not required to meet with everyone, and they could have filed their application and just gone to the hearing, but from the start they wanted to meet with the neighbors, talk to everybody, and at least answer questions, and like they said, be open and transparent. So can't thank them enough for that, because not everybody does do that, and truly appreciate it, especially from me, and I know most of you probably feel the same way. So thank you all for coming. I'll be around after too to answer questions. I'm sure they'll stick around a little bit, and without further ado, here's Jeffrey Goldstein.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I very much appreciate it. I'm Jeffrey Goldstein. I am one of the principals of Mediplex Property Group. I had a chance to meet most of you individually before the meeting started. I'll be around once we're concluded and happy to sit and talk with you some more at the end as well. As we've sent out, and as we talked a little bit about tonight, we are proposing to redevelop the property on Old York Road, centering Eckert and Guernsey, by taking down some of the existing all vacant properties and putting up one 20,000 square foot medical building, which will be 10,000 square feet per floor over 2 floors. What we're proposing to do is take what are these 9 different properties right now that make up about 17,000 square feet of footprint space and consolidate it to one 10,000 square footprint, basically reducing the amount of buildable area by almost, is it 50%? Including some, right. And then also trying to take with what we've worked with Commissioner Sanchez and the township over the past several months to try and understand the revised zoning code, understand what the township envisioned as a redevelopment of the property, both from a look and feel, what some of the hot button issues were that dealt with parking and access, the look and feel, the walkability of the site. And we hope that what we've come up with after several iterations and several meetings is a plan that does that really gravitates something new towards the look and feel of the building, something that allows for some walkability, some pedestrian walkways and seating areas, and takes a responsible view of development. One of the things I'll mention is we are local. My family lives about a half a mile from here still. We have other projects in the area, namely the DeVita dialysis on across from the Willow Grove Mall. That's one of our properties. As you know, as Ben mentioned, we wanted to come here. We are part of this community. We have developed here. We want to continue to develop here, and we want to be a fabric of Abington. The same way that we make long-term investments, so do the tenants that we place in our buildings. This building, over 2 stories, will feature 1 specialty medical practice per story. So 2 different practices, each occupying 1 floor of the building, both of which have already committed to 15 or 20-year leases to occupy the space. We're not in the habit of flipping properties. We're not in the habit of having people come in and out. We make a long-term commitment to the neighborhoods and the communities where we build, and we like to think that our tenants make a long-term commitment to the properties that we put together because we're responsible in our development, because we put together what we believe are Class A properties. We like to think that it goes a long way to supporting, that sort of mainstay. With that in mind, what I'd like to do is just turn it over to any questions you might have, and welcome you all. There's some, and it's warm outside, so there's some water, there's some drinks, there's some food. By all means, please just make yourselves.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? So that you understand, the parking area that we are proposing will have 102 spaces, and that should be more than sufficient because these are the medical facilities that we are proposing will not be, they'll have some staff, but most of the time people will be coming for an hour and a half, and then leaving. So the traffic, number one, will not be significant, and neither will there be there should not be any additional parking necessary per se on the streets itself. Any questions? Let me, before you start, I assume, Ben, you want me to hand them the microphone? Ask them to tell them their name and their address. Since you're on television, you're welcome. I'll lend you a comb if it helps.
You can if you want.
All right, my name is Janet Delbove, and I live at 1853 Eckerd Avenue
Yes, ma'am.
in Abington. I am curious to know what will happen to the residents at 1854. Is that one that will be demolished?
Is that the duplex property?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so my understanding is that as of the beginning of this month, both of the apartments are vacant, and those...
If that's the right, we
if
may
that's
have the
right,
wrong
they
address.
will both be vacant and coming down, correct.
Within what time period?
Sorry. I don't know the specific time period, but they will both be coming down as part of the redevelopment, yes.
Okay, thank
I would
you.
imagine that if we're successful, we have to go through the zoning board, which has a meeting next week. Then we have to go to planning commission, and we have to go to the township board of commissioners. That process takes time, and it's unpredictable. But if we are successful, I'm guessing we'll be ready to go sometime in the fall.
Okay.
And that will be one of the first things that we'll do,
Right.
is to clear the property. Look, some of the, you know that some of the areas most of the areas being parked on right now, or much of it, is being used by trucks and by all kinds of stuff, and there's gravel, there's some asphalt. This will be changed in the sense that this will be a very nice looking parking lot. It will be complete asphalt, it'll be striped, so that people can see exactly what it is. There'll be drainage system in place, so you don't have to worry about that.
And there will be lots of trees,
To the extent well, let me-
right?
I don't know.
Oh, that's not a good answer.
First of all, I can't define lots of.
Many tall trees.
Secondly, there's a balancing. The township will require us, and we will follow that requirement in terms of their ordinance and the trees that they want to preserve. Now, the more trees we put up and the more trees we preserve, the smaller the parking area becomes. for people to park. So there's a balancing act. We want it to look good. We want to preserve as many trees as possible.
Right.
I can't, I'm not going to, I told you, I wouldn't give you baloney.
Right.
Those plants will be forthcoming. Okay, we will be, after we get to, this process is such that we will start by going to the zoning board and getting whatever approvals that we need if they give it to us. Then we will go to township, and at that point, we'll be talking about things like drainage and trees. We are aware of their desires. We have to meet those desires.
Right.
Okay? We'll do the best we can with it. We all like green. But you understand what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
If I may add one other
Yes.
piece, right now where you have those properties, I'm going to stand up for 1 second. As it sits today, the gravel parking lot pushes directly up against and abuts that property next door. The way our plan is set up, there is a 20-foot setback between that property line and where the parking will start. In addition, after the 20-foot setback is where the shrubs, the trees begin. So one of the things that will happen as part of this process is, even though it looks as though, and we are replacing that one duplex portion in particular with parking, there actually will be a created setback that creates more distance than has ever existed between the residential property and what will be
Yes.
parking area.
Well, part of my reason for asking about that particular residence is that my granddaughter's friend lives there.
I'm her daughter, Jennifer Delboeuf. I live in the same residence. I'm just curious, who owns that property currently? Does the previous owner,
Yes.
Christine, who used to own the construction company, she's still the owner?
They are, we have an agreement of sale, and we will
Okay.
be the owner once we get our approvals. And
Okay, so my daughter's bestie lives there. That's what she was trying to tell you. They'll find a place to live, but we're just curious, what will happen? They just renewed their year lease. So what will happen in terms of, I'm just asking for him, to give him information. What will happen with his lease? Is he going to have to pay extra money because, he has to be, he's being forced out of his home?
I can't.
I know that's a little messy because.
Well, no,
I
it's
don't know
okay.
who's-
I can't answer because I want to see the lease.
Okay.
We may not be able to do what we want to do, or we may have to wait. That may not be smart.
Gotcha.
Because you want us to do this all at once, not over a period of time.
Right,
We will work
right.
with them as best we can. We're not in the business of throwing people out.
Okay.
But I can't answer more than that because I don't know.
Okay.
We are under the impression
Oh,
that the leases were not renewed.
okay.
I
So
don't
okay, yeah, she was asking, she's just saying now because she wanted to know how much time they had. But again, you said it could be the fall. You really don't know for
Yeah,
sure yet.
and you can have,
Okay.
look, I'll give you my card and my number. If they want to call us, if we can help
Oh,
them, we
that'd be
will.
great.
Okay?
Okay,
Have
wonderful.
my information for the same based on
Okay.
the information.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, could you want to give the microphone to back, ask the gentleman to give his name and
I'm
address?
Bob Hunt, 1807 Eckerd Avenue, I think. I think a concern that's shared by a number of folks who live on Eckerd Avenue, it's Eckerd Avenue. Mr. Sanchez, this is directed to you too, if you would. Eckerd Avenue is a shortcut of traffic heading south down 611 that don't want to wait at the light at Susquehanna to get in line and shoot down. And a fair amount of folks drive way too fast. And there's
I understand, I live on Lenox Road, which is by township line, so I'm not far away, and it drives me nuts because that's a real shortcut, and they're going at 50 miles an hour, and I got grandchildren playing in the front. Well, I got it.
And that's my concern. I don't know if there's anything the township can do as far as speed bumps or anything like that, but it's a situation where I've seen horrific things almost happen. I've seen kids on their own street, playing in the street, which they have a right to do in my mind, and people just texting and driving. And
I
it's
guess,
horrific.
Mike, is it a township street or is it a state street?
Township Street and the same, the same applies.
Right. So I was going to follow up and somewhere, and I would like some guidance as far as that, but I think we need to do something before somebody gets really hurt. So,
I understand. We're not against it. We'd be happy to join you in that request so that you understand. But I also want you to understand that it's not within our power.
no, I understand that, but Mr. Sanchez here, I did want to bring it up. And that's, Lisa.
It is within your power where the cars come and go from that parking lot.
Yes.
And based on that plot plan, the exit is Eckerd Avenue, correct? Which is a one-way street, and it doesn't give,
Well, and Guernsey, so.
yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, there's a lot of good things going on here. It looks like it's gonna be a beautiful complex. But, you know, I have 6 kids, and that's a one-way street. It's all parked on our side of the street, so when people cut through all the time, and they go 35 miles an hour, which the speed limit is 25, they're not gonna, you know, like, technically, according to, I talked to the police, that they're not speeding, there's nothing they can do about that, and it's way too fast. So you're adding 102 spots, which is 102 potential cars coming down that street that really don't have any other option but to go ripping down there.
We have engaged the traffic engineers we talked about, and there are some studies that we're doing right now. I can tell you that the reason that we put those curb cuts closer to the front, and what we've done, there were initially 9 different entrances to the various properties. We reduced that down to 2. Coming into the property will mostly be, we would imagine, off of Old York Road based on where those cuts are. People coming out of the property who want to get back onto Old York Road can come out the Guernsey entrance and go right to North, just make a right and a right back onto Old York Road. To the extent that there are cars that want to go south, obviously we know, and again, my family lives in this area.
Right.
I know people come around, they make the U-turns, I know people go down.
Most people are gonna.
And so that you understand that the township traffic engineer, I think rightfully, liked what we're proposing, because, in fact, they requested it because most of the properties that are being developed on Old York Road have curb cuts on Old York Road, which in and of itself is dangerous and slows traffic down and doesn't help. And so by
So one more second. Curb cuts are what we would call as a driveway to get in and out of the area.
Okay, sorry. So we're working with them. We are, and as Jeff said, for the most part, if I'm coming from that site, I'm going to make a right turn on Guernsey and go a right turn on Old York Road and a left turn past the hospital, make that a U-turn there. Not a U-turn, but go onto Highland Avenue. That's what most of the people are doing right now. Okay, so at least that have businesses there that are okay. I can't tell you what people are doing right now in terms of cutting through during rush hour.
Yeah, well.
One of the advantages of this kind of project is this is not going to be rush hour traffic. They're going to be there all day. Okay, they're going to be there at 9 o'clock and at 10 o'clock and at 12 o'clock. But generally not speaking, you're not going to see 100 cars leaving at 5 o'clock.
Right. Yeah. My only point is that when you're coming out there, and there's going to be a lot of cars that are going to be forced, that are going to take that option to come out there. There's one way, and it's a straight shot down to Huntington to get back out to Susquehanna, and it's going to create an excess of traffic on our street of people speeding. You know, I realize that that's, you know, not your fault.
By the way, if they want to make it a one-way street in the other direction, I'm fine with it.
Well,
But it's, again, it's outside of our purview.
you guys have no, you have no,
We have no say over it.
you have no say as to what they do with that street. Like, even if they made the end of that street where they could make a left or ran a parking lot, ran something across into the parking lot across the street, made an exit up there where cars would have another option. And
We're not against it. I mean, we would prefer our cars are the patient's cars having the ability to get to Old York Road as easily as possible. That's the
What
main
about an
trick.
exit on York Road? Right, that's what you're talking about, the curb cuts slowing down traffic, right?
So one thing
Yes.
about an entrance and exit onto Old York Road would be, you would have cars coming northbound Old York Road who would try to turn into the property,
Right.
or slowing down. They create
That's where you.
fender benders, because, when you're pulling into a parking lot, you're not going 35. You want to slow down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an issue on any.
And then pulling out.
So what's the difference between our street turning right and turning right into your property then?
Well, because it's there already. We're not changing anything. What we're doing is we're reducing the ability of cars to, when we said there are a certain amount of curb cuts, theoretically, and these properties have been pretty much vacant for a long time, if they were all full, you would have cars coming from all over the place onto your streets. We're eliminating all of that. In terms of getting us quicker to Old York Road, we'll talk to the traffic engineer for the township, and we're going to be followed by their recommendations. But I need to emphasize, we're not looking at a huge amount of traffic on a per hourly basis at any time of the day. You're going to have some people who are going to be working there, okay, but that's going to be a relatively small number compared to the overall. And it looks like when you go to the doctor's office, okay, and it's staggered. And so that should not be the kind of problem. Theoretically, if you have a retail establishment there, okay, or maybe the wrong example. You have an office building there. Everybody works 9 to 5. Everybody gets out at 5. And now everybody comes in at 9. Now you got a problem. Which, by the way, is a permitted use. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Chris. I live on 1853 Guernsey, so I guess we're.
You meet each other before, I heard.
No, we haven't. We just moved
See,
in.
we've already accomplished
We just
something
moved in
you
about a
didn't
month
expect.
ago. It seems to me, and I just want to clarify because it's not 100% clear to me the metrics, and I know that this is a rough sort of example of what the parking lot's going to look like. But it seems to me that if Eckerd is one way going towards, sort of going away from Old York Road, and Guernsey is two ways, are the entrance and exits of the parking lot fixed, like one way in and one way out only?
No.
No, they would be two ways.
Guernsey-
Because if they were one way, that would cause anybody looping off of Old York Road.
Guernsey's going to have in and out because it's
Okay.
a two-way street.
It is a two.
And Eckerd is too, I guess. And both.
Eckerd is a one-way street.
No, but it still will have in and out.
You'll have full access. What Marcel means is that you'll be able to pull into the lot and out of the lot.
So it's a two-way. It's a
It'll
two-way
be a
exit.
two-way egress.
Egress. Yeah. Okay.
And again-
Although I mean, if most of the people because Old York Road is the main thoroughfare, that mostly we would see people looping back out to Old York Road, and that we wouldn't see the cars coming down Eckerd or coming down Guernsey.
That is the expectation, but that again, the reason we brought a traffic engineer on is to really look at that, sit with the township's traffic engineer and come up with what is the most responsible solution for the project. Gentleman in the back.
Thanks. My name's Todd Kime. My wife Joanna and I live at 1843 Guernsey Avenue. And I don't see why an egress on 611 with a U, egress in and out on the one side of the parking lot why slowing traffic down on 611 is a problem. It's not a highway. I mean, I'd like to see traffic. People fly northbound on 611. There was a traffic study done on Guernsey that Ben helped us out with, and I'm not sure the exact hours, so it's over 4 or 5 days. But either way you do it, whether it's a 4-day, 24-hour period or 5-day, daily between 693 and 867 cars come down Guernsey Avenue. Daily. You're talking about 100 and some spots, turning over multiple times a day. It's going to add a lot of cars to both Eckerd and Guernsey. I know we're a cut through one way, they're a cut through the other way. But they get the same thing we do. Now, let me finish.
Sure.
You say it's not going to be during rush hour time. 611's not that busy at that time then, so they can go there.
Yeah.
I'll also say, if it's not going to be at rush hour time. And speed is an issue on those streets as well. So, but I'd like to see the egresses on 611. We don't have a problem with the building of the complex. We think it's good for the neighborhood, that whole thing. Our biggest problem is with egress onto our streets. Also, looking at the map there, if you look at the angle of Guernsey Avenue to 611, it is not a 90-degree angle. When people are sitting on Guernsey Avenue, headed towards 611, waiting to turn right onto 611, you can't turn right onto Guernsey Avenue with a car sitting there waiting to turn right. People wind up cutting through the parking lot of the old dry cleaners because of that angle and how narrow that street is. Even though it's a two-way street, you cannot make a right turn there safely. And people don't reduce speed, people just cut around. I mean, the traffic is insane. I've gone down to the end of the street, sat there waiting to turn right on 611 in my truck with my turn signal on during rush hour time. Somebody comes down the street and cuts around me to turn on to 611. I mean, that's the kind of crazy people and crazy traffic we're dealing with in our neighborhood. And someone is going to get hurt. We have 4 kids, you know, and kids playing all the time. I mean, I do actually cut through Eckerd sometimes when I need to go the other way, but I like barely hit my accelerator going down that street, and there are kids. You know, these are my neighbors, they're kids. You know, I got an 8,000-pound truck. The last thing I want to do is speed. You know, you can't stop it. But I just don't see why we couldn't do an egress on the 611. The Price building across from Abington Hospital has it, and it seems to work just fine. Ben, I'd love to see speed humps on both streets.
We're on the curb cuts. We're following the recommendations of the professionals that recommended to us. But you raised a good point in the beginning, which is true. Most of the day, nobody's going to go on Guernsey unless they've got business in the back, because it's going to be easy to get onto Old York Road.
But if someone's coming up Susquehanna Road from that whole side, wherever you're going to be drawing people from, and they're going to come up the windy part, what used to be called Vinegar Hill, and they're going to know that they need to make a right on 611 off Susquehanna, they won't do it. They're going to turn right on Huntington and come down Guernsey and come into your parking lot. I guarantee it.
They might. I can't tell you that they won't.
600 to 700 cars a day are doing that very same thing.
But I bet you most of them are doing it between 4 and 6, and maybe between 8 and 10.
If it's going to be 9 to 5 traffic anyway, then putting the egress on 611 isn't that big of a problem, because the traffic on 611 won't be that heavy from 9 to 5.
I think 611 is a state highway, and I believe that there's this, and look, I drive 611 every day of the week, and it's a road that requires movement, whether we like it or not, because that's the only road in and out of the neighborhood.
But if they're slowing down to make a right on the Guernsey to make a left into your parking lot, or a right onto Eckerd to make a right into your parking lot, they still have to slow down to make a right. So what's the difference if they're doing it off 611 and directly into your parking lot?
Because it's not just pulling in, it's also pulling out, and it's a lot safer to pull out onto Eckerd and to Guernsey than it is.
I'm sorry, okay, if I may. I realize this is an issue. I realize that it's an important issue. It's why we have engaged the traffic engineer. It's why we talked to the township and their traffic engineer. We've been weighing the pros of walkability. That's something the township has talked about. Ways to cut into that. We don't have an answer for you tonight. The answer I can give you is, I promise this. We are going to have our engineers sit down. We're going to go over options with the township. And we're going to go over other options even before we come back next week to make a presentation. I don't know what the answer is going to be. I can't tell you. We're taking the direction the township's given us right now, but we will take this under consideration. We will look and see what is viable for the site. Again, one of the things that also is a realistic consideration is when you open up a curb cut on 611 for the property, it reduces the number of spaces we can put on the site, which by township ordinance and regulation, we have to have a certain number of spaces on the site. As Marcel said, this is a balancing act. We are respectful of the issue. We truly are, and we understand it. And we will do our best to work with the township and with you as the residents to come up with a solution that makes sense, that can alleviate some of the concerns. As it relates to the speeding issue, I'm 100% in agreement with you, and if the township would consent to doing those types of speed bumps, we would be fully supportive of that. But that is a township issue. But it is something we're continuing to look at and we will address.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name's Melanie Gavin. I live at 1803 Eckert. You said you have to have a certain number of parking spaces for this, but I just have to say, being a resident here, it's really upsetting to see 102 parking spaces. Municipal parking is across the street. Penn State parking is down the street. I'd like you to hear this, Commissioner Sanchez. It's just really distressing to me as a resident.
We can't talk about the municipal
I know you
parking
can't.
issue. I can tell you as a resident of Abington Township, it's brutal. They don't have enough parking spaces. Sooner or later, somebody's going to end up giving you more parking spaces because you've seen it. I mean, if you get during the day, I mean, cars are coming in and going out, and it's rough. We're trying to make things so that you understand the general goal. We certainly want to build the building. We want to make it nice. We want to make it to be an asset, something that's better than was before. There are issues that you have right now which we didn't cause. If we can help alleviate those issues, fine. We're not looking to make them worse. Okay, that's as straightforward answers as I can give. And within that framework, we may have some other ideas. Okay, I still think, my own opinion, speed bumps is simple and the best answer. Okay.
One other thing I would like to talk about.
Just one more comment when I have this. Wawa entrance and exit are on Old York Road.
And it's a mess.
Right, well, let's make another one.
One other thing I would like to talk about the parking is, there's no parking on 611, as you guys know. One of the things we're trying to alleviate is anybody parking on the side streets in front of the houses. So that's why we have the amount of spaces there.
We get that.
But you came up with 102 parking spots. That's kind of ridiculous. Because half of these businesses on here do not have 100 parking spots.
Could you give us your name and address, ma'am?
I live at 1252.
Could you give us your name and address, please?
My name is Janet. I live at 1252 Huntington Road.
Okay.
Okay? We did a study on Huntington Road.
Yes.
Through the township. We were told we cannot have speed bumps because 1,000 cars going down Huntington Pike and 25% of the cars going over the speed limit at 65 miles an hour is not enough protection for our kids. So who says that they're going to give speed bumps out here when they don't care about Huntington Road? And there's no reason to put 102 parking spots in the parking lot.
I don't have an answer for the first part. I will tell you that we wanted to ensure what our engineer has indicated. We don't want an overflow, which I've seen too often in medical and regular office buildings on the street. We want to keep that it's the communities.
If you go down 611, all the businesses here, the daycare has maybe 50 parking spots.
So
There's 100 and some kids to go there.
allow me to address that if I may.
None of
please.
which drive.
So the businesses that have been here for a certain period of time and are grandfathered in with the parking spaces they have are one piece. Again, the speeding issue down the streets, it's not something we can, take control over. We agree with you and we support that. The parking cars, that is a specific township regulation. X number of square feet, the zoning code requires that X number of square feet requires X number of cars. So we are required to have 5 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet of space we have. That is a zoning code regulation. So in order to put up a building of 20,000 square feet, we're required to have 100 parking spaces. It worked out that we had 102 when we designed the lot, but I think it was 101. But that is not something that was just decided on our own behalf. The township has a specific regulation in its zoning code that requires us to have a certain number of parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet, and for a medical use, it's 5 parking stalls for every 1,000 square feet of space.
And in fairness to the township also, I think, again, I'm going to go back to you. It'd be nice if you start off with a property which is free and clear, and you can start from scratch. You could make it look a hell of a lot better, okay? In this particular case, it's an old area, it's an old development. we have what we have. One of the things that we're trying to do is incorporate the Old York Road corridor to look like the entrance in Abington Township, which is why the building has been designed, which is why we don't want people necessarily coming in and out of Old York Road, because that is also part of the community. That's what's going to tell people what Abington is to a large degree. And this side of the street is one, the other side is another. We want to add to that. We cannot deal with issues that are there. We can try to help alleviate it to the extent that we have any possibility of doing that. We are not in the business. We do not want to aggravate it further, period.
Hi there.
Hi.
Lisa Brownholtz, 1812 Eckerd Avenue. Are you against putting the drives on York Road?
I'm going to be blunt. Personally, yes, but I'm not driving that train, okay?
Who
The township.
do we get in touch with at the township?
Whoever, I mean, you talk to the commissioner, he'll let you know how to deal with it.
Mr.
I will-
Sanchez knows how we feel. Who?
I will, let me just say this to you. I think, I live in a street, Lenox Road, where there's a medical office building across the street from me. It's where the Einstein Moss Center is. And many years ago, while there is an entrance from Old York Road, nobody takes it, because there's an entrance from Old York Road into Lenox, and then they can pull in. The people that are driving realize it's safer for them, because they don't want to get clipped from behind. So hypothetically, just hypothetically, if we put something on Old York Road and we had entrances the way we have them, most of the cars aren't going to go in and out from Old York Road.
So then let's close the entrance and the exit on Eckerd and York Road, Eckerd and Guernsey. And you keep saying that you're worrying about a fender bender on York Road. What about my 3 children? What about the 30-plus children that live on our street? Guys, do you know how many are on your street?
We're not being exclusive. Okay, so that, no, you're saying that if we're saying one thing, therefore we don't care about your kids. We do.
No, I'm not saying that at all, but you keep repeating yourself and saying that we're worrying about the traffic and slowing down because car accidents and
Well, it's
blah,
more than
blah.
that. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to have more tie-ups. Okay, I mean,
4 o'clock in the afternoon, my kids are getting off of the
I
bus.
think it's also important to understand that even if we were to put one entrance on Old York Road, we would still be required to have one on either Guernsey or Eckerd. It's not one or the other. The way the zoning ordinances are written, the way it's set up, we would still be required to have those other exits. It's not as though it's one or the other, that if we put something on Old York Road, and again, we are in the midst of doing a traffic study, we have a traffic engineer, and we'll have more data to share at that zoning hearing board. But doing one wouldn't alleviate the others. If we were, and again, I want to go back to, we did take our direction from the township because of the walkability, because of having a pedestrian area on the site specifically, and again, to arrange for the required parking that we need for the site. Again, a zoning issue that we're working through. One of the issues is even if we were to put an egress, the curb cut, on Old York Road, we would still have to have one on Eckerd and or Guernsey. It would not remove the need to have them there by regulation. Again, that's not a decision we're making. Required to have those because you have to have multiple egress points.
Who's responsible?
You don't have enough. You don't have enough.
you won't get an approval from PennDOT. We don't even know if we would get an approval from PennDOT on a curb cut.
There's not. Again, there are requirements, and I am not the expert.
Ultimately, the decision whether or not there could be a curb cut on 611 is PennDOT's. It's a state highway. They won't. I guarantee you, they won't give us 2 curb cuts, and I'm not sure they would necessarily give us 1 if they see that there are other alternatives. But I don't know.
So this is a rendering. Does that building need to be there? could it be moved back and then have the exit and an entrance off of Old York Road?
We looked at several configurations of the building in order to meet the zoning requirements. Well, it's not even parking. We're required to have the building within 15 feet of Old York Road.
They call it the build to line, so they want the walkability downtown feel. So it's, you walk through an old downtown, you have the buildings up against the road, you have your, your walking feel.
That's great, and I know it's not you, the walkability. My kids aren't going to be able to walk on our street.
Right.
And it's not just going to be your traffic, 102 spots. It's the other traffic also that's going to be coming. So now you're adding traffic coming down our street. Where's our walkability?
And you talk about people rear-ending.
Could you give us your name and address, ma'am?
1807 Eckerd. You were saying that you're worried about people getting rear-ended turning off of Old York Road. That's exactly what we do every day. Every day when we turn down Eckerd, we're looking in our rearview mirror to see if we're going to get slammed by somebody texting. So what makes that any less important for you?
It doesn't, but again, I'm going to from my own experience. I have a street very similar to yours on this particular issue. It's hard getting in and left turn and right turn sometimes, and I've got to be careful. But if I had to get into Einstein, okay, and there was a curb cut there, and you know what happens when people are driving, they're looking for street signs. They're not looking for the curb cuts within the building. But again, we'll follow the direction of whatever the traffic engineers tell us. We don't have a position that says it's got to be one or the other.
May I ask why you chose that size building? You're talking about you have to have a certain number of spaces for the size of the building. Why does the building have to be that size?
Economics, simply put. It's not a big building by today's standards. Well, but it's only 20,000 square feet. We're reducing the amount of space that is presently being used by the various buildings by 70%, which is good. But having said all of that, with all of the regulations and all of the things that have to be done that are expensive and are right, I mean, I'm not criticizing, and the cost of land and the cost of construction, okay, what you don't want us to do is build something that is not sustainable, and then it looks like hell afterwards, and you've seen that in many places.
It does look very nice. Oh, Lisa again.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
You had mentioned seating areas.
The what?
You, in the beginning, someone had mentioned
Plaza along Old York Road, correct?
a plaza.
It's going to be a little plaza.
They call it a plaza. It's really just a small.
With benches and landscaping.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know who it would get addressed to. If, and we hope not, if the entrance and exit are on on Eckerd and Guernsey, who do we talk to about having signs that say local traffic only, no right turn, or no left turn? Is that a possibility? Is that on your end? Is that on?
It would be the township, and we would be willing to work with you and the state. Okay? Is that what, did I say?
Well, I don't know. Again, we can't restrict our own access to the site.
No, that's not. I don't think that's what she's. I don't think that she. Look, there
No,
could.
because you guys are working there, obviously, but.
Theoretically, you could end up having a right turn only on Guernsey, for example. That's what she's talking about. Okay?
No, I know, yeah.
But people actually, it does happen sometimes. People try, if they're really close to Old York Road on Eckerd, they do try to go the wrong way and get out there. And it happens more than one would think.
Well, no, and on Eckerd, I would be, of course, and again, it probably is a township issue, but of course we would support, we would put, and in fact, I think we're required to have a sign that says one-way traffic only going on to Eckerd. I mean, that's a requirement we would have.
Hi, my name's Debbie Britt. We live at 1839 Guernsey Avenue. And one thing I need you guys to understand too is we've been through this before. We had Sunrise put across the street from us, and that was a huge
I'm sorry, you had
thing.
what put across from me?
Sunrise.
Okay.
Sunrise
Yeah.
because we're right on Guernsey, it's directly across
I know
the
where you
street
are.
from us. No, they've turned out to be wonderful neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all a process. And now we're also dealing with what's going on at the Y.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand where the passion's coming from.
And
I know you do.
We fully understand it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
wish we
so-
weren't competing with the Y. We don't intend to. Okay? We are not, we want to build something that works, okay, and that we can be proud of and that you can be proud of.
Right.
I'm aware of the Sunrise. I go there, I have meetings there frequently.
Yeah.
Susquehanna Road and Old York Road, and the commissioner would tell you, is going to be a difficult revitalization and redevelopment area. I do think that there are some plans in the work to try to make that happen, which makes a lot of sense. And if then when that happens, that can also take care of a lot of the traffic problems. I mean, I'm guilty of sometimes going on Huntington Avenue when I'm coming up because traffic is crazy.
What is your car like? What's the name of the car?
I never take Guernsey or Eckert. I go up to Woodland and make a left turn. Fair enough? Because I'll tell you why, because I want a light. Because for me, it's safer. Okay? So there are things you can do. Maybe there's...
Well, the building is beautiful, and certainly that corner needs something because it has been let go. It's terrible. I mean, I hate to see the old houses go because I think they're magnificent. And most of us have old homes that we've maintained beautifully, and we're very passionate about that. So, but
And
anything
as
you can
see,
do
we're
to help
trying
us.
to add to that veneer.
So.
As of right now, and I will, again, to give you the answers we know, the two tenants who have committed to the building both operate on an 8 to 4 basis, as of now. Not right now, I can't, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have who has the microphone? This lady over here? And
I was going to say one thing.
I'm sorry, sure.
Mark Britt, I'm Debbie's husband, at 1839 Guernsey Avenue. For the last 42 years, we've lived there. I'm looking at your sketch there, and what appears pretty simple to me, and you could do it on your corner of Eckerd and York Road, and I don't know if Ben can get our corner rounded off a little bit, so when you come up northbound on Old York Road, you could take a much easier and safer right-hand turn into either one of those streets. Not talking about an egress, but as you slow down, you can make a turn without cutting through the dry cleaners parking lot or what's the guy's name who's vacating. Either way, it would make life a lot easier for everybody.
I think it's a good idea, but when I give you I'm an attorney, so I always have another side.
Okay.
When you make it easier, you're also going to get more traffic.
And faster.
We're talking about people that are going to turn on Eckerd for
Yeah, I understand.
what reason other than to live there or to go into this facility?
Or to cut through. Okay, and by the way, I'm not saying, I think it's a good, don't misunderstand me. I think it might be a good idea, but that, I would say to you, I bet you that if I took a vote.
Well, I'm inviting it down my street too, okay? But there are restrictions in the sense of space and width on our street. You want to come charging the opposite direction from York Road on my street, you're going to run into 8 cars in the morning, and it'll be a slowdown, you know? So I don't know if we're inviting traffic that way.
All right.
Just,
Well, it's, I know
it's just one way.
Look, it's certainly something we can look at, as long as it doesn't interfere with, it's a township issue, and as long as it doesn't, and PennDOT, and as long as it doesn't interfere with what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
And
but
it shouldn't.
all I'm saying to you, that corner of
I got it.
Eckerd,
I
you
got
can do
it.
that yourself, it's your property.
No,
If you,
it's an easement anyway, I got it.
yeah.
This lady over there.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. That's right in between Eckerd and Guernsey.
But you got all of it.
So, yeah, we're going to
Nobody cuts through to your street, don't you?
Nobody cuts through. Well, actually, we do sometimes, but very rarely. So my question is, if you would explain to me, maybe everybody else knows this and I missed it, but this sort of came out of the blue, and then we're having the neighbors meeting where I'm seeing, you know, getting this information for the first time. Maybe they had something else before. And then right away, we're going to the zoning board. Is that for a review, or is that for a hearing? Because I understand it's a hearing.
The zoning board is for, let me explain the process.
Okay.
The zoning board is for use, because we ask for certain uses. And in this particular case, one of the uses that we're asking for under the code is if you want to build an office building with medical offices, you have to get what they call a special exception. And the only one that issues that is the zoning board. There may be some other issues in terms of whether or not, I think we've covered them, but that at least have to be discussed. If we don't have enough parking spaces, we would need to get a variance, which is much more difficult and much more serious.
Which you need a hardship for, right?
Yes, we'd have to prove hardship. But we don't have that issue, okay, but I'm just using it as an example. I think the only thing that we will be needing is a special exception. There is some contradiction within the code, quite frankly, which we will discuss at the zoning board hearing, because we'll be asking the zoning board to make a decision on that. But that's really fundamentally where we are. And then what happens, and you're welcome to come to all those meetings, then we get into the nitty-gritty of what it's going to look like, because we'll then have the ability to build. But just because we have the ability to build doesn't mean we can. We still have to go through land development. And that process will be going first to the Planning Commission, which I think is scheduled in August, if everybody got it right?
It's either August or September.
August or September. And then it goes to the Board of Commissioners. Again, I've told you I'd be honest with you. As a developer and a developer's attorney, we're going to try to push it as quickly as we can reasonably, but we're going to abide by whatever the township tells us in terms of the time. But that's the process.
So my concern is that these neighbors are hearing this and understanding this, I think, for the first time. Shake yes or no? Yes? Okay. So, okay. So other than
I have to tell you, I do a lot of this work. Abington's fairly unusual that the commissioners want the developer to meet with the neighbors before they go to a public hearing, where decisions will be made, which I think is really good, so you can have this kind of discussion.
Yes, and I do think an open discussion is good, but I also think neighbors should know that open discussion doesn't get onto the public record. And so if they have objections, they didn't just voice them here, they actually...
No, it's being taped.
Does that go into the hearing process? Because the zoning board should have some deference to the residents and what they think about granting a special exception.
I understand your question. At the zoning hearing board, you will be given opportunity for public comment.
And that's the record
And that
I'm
is the
talking
record.
about, where
Hopefully,
that matters in their decision.
Look, and I'm not going to lie to you, hopefully we've either taken care of some of your concerns or alleviated them or tried to respond to them, because we're not crazy. I would, as an attorney, would much rather have this discussion now and swing it out and figure it out to what we can do to work together than go to the zoning hearing board and get ambushed. Okay, that's just the truth. But the reverse is it gives you an opportunity to be part of the process early. To the extent that we can alleviate your concerns, and we may not be able. I don't know how to deal with traffic or parking. We're going to need traffic. We're going to need professionals for that, but at least we know what the issue is, and we're going to be looking for as many answers as we can give. We'll work with the township. We'll work with you. It's not going to be perfect. I go back to, this is an old community, okay, but maybe we can make it a little bit better.
Okay, and I would like to understand, Mark Penical's opinion differs from yours. You're appealing his opinion. What was his opinion? Can you explain it
Sure.
so others understand
I won't say that it's necessarily different.
And also explain the hardship in
Sure.
the alternative.
Under the zoning code, there are two sections. One says that this is an special exception, and another one seems to say that this may require a variance. He believes that the section that requires a variance may take precedence over the one that requires a special exception, and I don't. And I think I'm going to be right, but that's just an opinion. I haven't seen it before because it's contradictory. It creates a problem for not just for me, but for anyone. I think that if you read the entire chapter of this, it's chapter 19, there's another provision which clearly talks about special exceptions and stuff like that. So I think I can't speak for the zoning officer. I think he raised an issue, a legitimate issue, and I think he knows that we're going to be talking about it with the zoning board, and they're going to have to decide whether they feel it's a special exception or a variance.
And the last question is, could you explain your hardship if you are turned down for the special exception? What is your hardship for the variance?
I think so, but like that, I will say for the zoning board hearing if it's necessary, if you don't mind. Oh, sure. It's an open hearing. It's not going to be secret. I just happen to feel strongly that this is a special exception and not a variance. Variance is legally much more difficult, but the zoning board frequently grants them. They also frequently lead to significant litigation on appeals, and the courts then will make a decision. I'm pretty comfortable in that aspect of it, so as an attorney, but we'll talk about it. It's going to be an open discussion.
And I want to talk just, if it's okay, I'd like to address your question about the timing of this. We've spent the last probably 8 or 9 months working on this project, evaluating it, and that's really even after we put it under agreement, the contract to acquire. And it's been months of understanding what could go, during that process, the township passed its new zoning ordinance. We had to start from scratch and kind of look back and not say, well, we were grandfathered in, but take the approach we want to adapt the project to what is there now. Based on that, we had a number of meetings with the township officials, informally, one formally. Once we finally understood, based on the letter and the spirit of the new variance and the new zoning code, what we felt was the appropriate delivery of a project. What we hope is a responsible project, the delivery of a building that has the look and the feel and the longevity that is important to everybody in this room. That meeting took place with the township officially, I want to say the last week of June, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Ben, you could tell me. Right around there. As soon as the day after we had that professional services meeting, which started the process officially, we filed for the zoning meeting in July and immediately sent out the letters and the emails. So it's not, I don't want it to be a perception that we waited to the last second to do this. We wanted to make sure we had a plan that met all the needs of the township, that addressed all the needs of the township as they presented them to us, was still a responsible development, and as Marcel said, honestly, was economically responsible for us in acquiring and redeveloping the project. And to the best of our ability, I'm hoping we've captured that with this project. But that's what led us to that timeline that has us here tonight.
And I want to address your question about the special exception and variance, because you kind of caught me off guard, and you should keep your mouth shut as a lawyer. There's an issue here that the back space, which doesn't look great, where you have parked vehicles, which you really probably wouldn't want to be there. But it's in a different zoning classification. It's what we call R4. It is also what we call a non-conforming use. And by law, you're generally permitted to use a non-conforming use for the same thing that it's been used for before. In this particular case, we aren't building anything. We're merely putting down asphalt largely on parking areas that are already there. We interpret that it's an existing non-conforming use, and we have a right to it, and therefore we only need a special exception. There is a section, which is 1911, which, I'm reading actually from the township report itself, that the nonconforming use is in contradiction. In 1911, he believes, contradicts the above listed section, in that nonconforming uses are not permitted to be continued when the site is being redeveloped. You get into a definition of redevelopment. Redevelopment generally means that you're building up structures. We're not putting any structures up. This is an area for parking, so we legally feel we're in pretty good shape, but that is the issue.
Let me show them where it is.
And let me show you.
So,
No, it's not, because the site, and he's going to show you.
If I can show you. So this is the myriad of different buildings as they exist today. Behind this line, all of this right here for the past, I don't know how many years, probably 20, 30 years, has been a parking lot for the construction vehicles. We are proposing to leave it, but paving it, making it nicer, as the gravel is now. We just want to leave this as a parking area as well. So that's when Marcel talks about the non-conforming use, we just want to keep this as the parking area that it has historically been. So that's the area that Mark had mentioned.
With the addition of the setbacks along the other residential and along Clifford Avenue.
Which will be
more green space between them, instead of just paving up to the property line, which the gravel is right now.
Which will be an improvement for the neighbors that are there.
When you say gates, on the driveways themselves?
The reason I'm asking is that, in my experience, in front of my home, many times the people who are visiting the hospital will park on my street. And usually not below my house because it's too far to walk. So I'm wondering now whether you're going to get the overflow. You know, people who literally cannot afford to park their cars in the hospital parking lot. I'm wondering whether you'll see them there.
I think the hospital lots are free.
You're asking a good question, but it's impossible to answer it. We will tell you that I'm sure there will be signs up that will indicate that it's used for people who are going to the medical office building, and it's subject to towing. But beyond that, okay, there's no way. I told you up front, I can't lie. So,
Well, I see that more in the evening visitors rather than.
Well, actually.
That I will address. One of the things we've talked to the township about, and as we've mentioned, during the business hours that will be posted, it will be parking for the business of the building. On evenings and weekends, that will be an open lot for the benefit of the residents. So there will be 8 to 4, unless that is something that you guys are opposed to, and we'll talk about that.
When I asked you what the hours of you said that it's going to be from 8 to 4.
Yes.
Right.
That lot will be used for your business.
Correct.
The 2 doctors' offices. So now you're saying after 4 o'clock and on the weekends, that lot's going to be open to whomever?
He said for the residents.
If the township.
How are you?
Well, we don't.
I'm gonna take a breath. What residents? The residents that are coming from Willow Grove that want to go to the hospital? The residents that are coming from Elkins Park that need to go pay a parking ticket here?
You're not being fair, because.
Oh, I'm being fair.
No, listen. You're saying, or somebody said, that there are people now parked on your street because they can't afford or don't want to pay parking fees at the hospital. It's beyond that. It's there right now. We can talk to you. We have lots of options, including not letting anybody use it. Right. We can also talk to, we've had some conversations with the township, which may or may not be possible for other reasons. But frankly, it would be a wonderful place for an overflow for the police department, for example, simply
They
put.
have that lot right across the street where Abby's thrift shop was.
I'm just saying.
And
But
again, it was something that we had discussed, and if the overflow was a benefit to the neighborhood, it was something we were willing to consider. If it turns out that it's not, we don't have to. can
We
make
don't, we don't,
smart.
we don't have an,
So when can we verbalize our opinion to the township? What's the next step?
you can do it at the zoning board, or you can.
When is that?
You can do it at the zoning board, or if you want, you can let me know beforehand, and I'll be happy to tell the township what your position is. Or you can tell the commissioner, and he'll do it. Oh, at the time of the zoning hearing board is 7:30, I think.
7:30? I don't remember.
It's what?
It's
Next Tuesday. Yes.
Tuesday, July 17th.
My other question is, when you were saying that you're going to the zoning board about that little parcel there that was the special exception, thank you, Tim, where it was parking and there were other structures there, I know they would have the meetings and things like that. If they don't agree with that, if the township doesn't agree with that, what does that mean?
Then we're going to ask for variance.
The variance is your exception to?
We're going to, well, no, variance is saying that special exception we have a right legally pretty much to get as long as we're not violating any of the ordinances.
Okay.
A variance requires a proof that you have a hardship. Hardship in this particular case, in part, would be that you've taken away parking spaces, and so therefore you make it almost impossible to build.
Because if you don't have those parking spaces, then you're not following
Then
that
we
code
have
rule
to-
about the
Then we would have to
five.
reduce the size of the building.
Oh. Okay. All right, thank you.
So you mentioned having consultants come in for things like traffic
Could you give us-
analysis.
could you give us your name
Oh, I'm
and-
sorry.
and address?
Jackie Rupp, 1809 Eckerd Avenue. I was wondering if you had anyone that you consulted with on what the impact would be on property values. And a follow-up to that would be, you mentioned developing DaVita, which I happen to have lived right nearby. So I think you're following me, but I can't get away. But do you have any data on what the impact on property values were at that location surrounding there?
I don't. I mean, historically, I can tell you that when you take properties that are vacant, you replace them with a state-of-the-art facility, it increases value, not decreases value of what's around it. But that's just.
But it's also not something that
It's
legally,
quantifiable, right.
legally you can consider. Any other questions, comments? Yes, can you give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, Herb McMahon, 1046 Huntington Road. Basically, you said the reason why you can't put an ingress off of Old York Road is because of the 15-foot walkability?
I'm sorry, we can't move the building away from Old York Road because of the 15-foot setback requirement.
Okay, but you could ask for a variance for that?
No.
To accommodate that?
No.
Why is that?
Because we wouldn't, first of all, it doesn't help us. Secondly, we probably wouldn't be able to get it. Because there's no reason why you can't do it where it is.
Because what I'm thinking is if the community wants it, it would be something that we could all agree on in terms of decreasing traffic through the neighborhood. I think their major concern, if I'm hearing everybody correctly, is the traffic through the neighborhood and the disturbance through the neighborhood. And I live on Huntington Road, which is back, the next street down, going north and south. And I'm sure it's going to create a certain amount of traffic coming down my street. So I don't live on Guernsey and I don't live on Erdrich, but I'm going to be affected as well. And they're going to turn somewhere. So if you want to go south on 611, your only option is to go through the neighborhood.
No.
You can't make a left
Your best
on
option,
Old
your
York
best
Road.
option is to make a right on Old York Road and a left at the hospital and then down Highland.
Okay, but
That's by far your best option. Susquehanna's a nightmare.
okay, but that would require pulling out going north on Old York Road, which is a zoo. I think that most people who are familiar with the area, who live in the area, would know that you probably go down one of those two streets and then come back up Old York Road where there's a light or something like that.
I wouldn't, and I'm familiar with the area.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, to me, it makes sense if you're working with the community and you want the community support and you want the community buy-in, that you would want to create an ingress off of Old York Road and kind of ask for a variance on that 15-foot walkability. I know it doesn't do anything for you. You already made that clear, but it does something for the community.
I'd have to look at it. I don't want to give you just an off-the-cuff answer.
Yeah,
I think the issue you raise creates a myriad of other problems for us and for the site, but we'd have to study it. And frankly, I'm not sure that the zoning board would agree to a variance. And then there are lots of issues with PennDOT and other problems. So I'll look at it, but I wouldn't be very optimistic.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is that you don't want it. That's frankly my impression based on just our brief interaction here. It sounds as though you don't want it. I think what it would probably mean is that your building would have to be reduced a little, even 10 or 15%. And I don't, I think you have to give a little to get a little. If you want the community support, I think what you need to do is create a little buy-in by, giving them something to hold on to and show a little goodwill on your side. I don't see any goodwill so far,
I appreciate that. I do take exception to that. Number one, we're here. We're trying to be, let me just finish it, let you go. Number two, we're trying to answer questions as honestly as we can. We're also in business. And right now, you have an area which once upon a time was probably very flourishing, which is totally empty, and which is going to be a drain on what it looks like in the community. We're trying to do something that's affordable, that we can build, and that looks nice. I could make an argument that the best place to put the building is in the back of the lot. But I don't think that would look very good when you're driving up Old York Road, number one. And number two, ultimately, wouldn't really be good for the neighbors. If I'm sitting as a neighbor and I'm looking at this objectively, I would probably want the building as close to Old York Road as possible. That's the truth. But we're going to change. We're going to disagree on that. And I don't want to be curt about this. We want you to like what we do. We, of course, want your buy-in. But ultimately, we have to do what the law requires us, and we have to make sure that when we build something, we can afford to maintain it and keep it.
Yeah, I think my point was basically the purpose of this meeting was to hear you and for you to hear us and for us to kind of see what we can agree on.
Let me just stop you.
Yeah.
You're partially right. I don't know if we can agree on anything. What we will do, because that really is the purpose of the meeting, is we're listening to your concerns, and to the extent that we can modify or change and deal with those concerns, or to help you alleviate some of those concerns, we're going to go back and take a look at that. That's what we're going to do. I can't make any promises beyond that.
Okay. So will there be any other meetings after you look that over besides the zoning meeting?
Well, after that, we get to the planning. Most of what you're raising, not all, but many of the things you're raising are land development issues, and that will be dealt with not at the zoning board, but at the planning commission, where you will get another shot at us, and at the Board of Commissioners.
Now, I hope you don't perceive this as a shot at you, because I take exception to that. What I want is just equal fairness and to somehow make progress where we can all say it's better at the end.
So, and thank you, and I do appreciate that, and I do realize that. I think to emphasize something else that Marcel just said, it's very important to understand the distinction between what we hope to accomplish next week and what the end result of this is going to look like. Next week's meeting, and Marcel, please correct me if I'm wrong, next week's meeting does not determine where curb cuts will go. Next week's meeting does not determine those factors. What next week's meeting determines is whether or not we are within the framework, the rights of our zoning rights to do the project. So it is not as though between now and a week from tonight, the issue of egress has to be resolved. That is not next week. As Marcel said, this is the Planning Commission where we would come back and present what we would hope to be our final design. Between now and those meetings, be it either August 28th or September 25th, I believe, are the next two in succession, so it just depends on where we are in the process. We will have another one of these meetings. We will continue to have these discussions. This meeting tonight is not, here's our plan, I hope you like it because we're moving forward with it, take it or leave it. That is not what we're doing, it's not who we are, it's not what we're about. We didn't do it at DeVita either, so hopefully that worked out nicely there. The reality is, this is about the zoning. The issue, and we understand it, and I hear you, and I promise you, we do hear you. The issue of concern here is the egress and the parking, but really it's the traffic. That is not something that will be addressed, and we won't solve that between now and 7 days from now, but we don't have to. We collectively, you as the community, the township, us, it's not going to be solved in 7 days. It will be solved before we go to the Planning Commission meeting. It will be solved before we look to say, this is our final, this is what we're doing, it's a done deal. It's a starting point. But the issue that is, and again, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, the issue that is of most concern, or the issue of concern in this room, is not one that is going to be determined next week. That meeting is not about the egress, it's not about the curb cuts, it's not about even, well, to some extent the design because of the zoning. It's about the right to do the project within the confines of the zoning of the area, the final design of the building, the curb cuts, the fencing, the trees, stormwater management, all of these things are part of our Planning Commission. And I promise you there will be more of these meetings between now and then, and you will look at what we're doing. We will work together to address this issue. And it's important because we will next week we will make note of the fact that we are working to address this issue, that we recognize it, that our traffic engineer will be working on it. I promise you we hear you. I promise you we're not ignoring it, and that we will come up with a responsible, for you, the residents, for the township, and for us as the developer, something that's responsible for everybody.
Can I ask one more question? You mentioned economic redevelopment. Can you talk a little bit about what you were referring to so that we can see your project in context of the larger picture that we're looking at in this area?
I was responding to something that comes out of your zoning code, okay, which talks about...
Okay, so you're not speaking about particular projects that you're aware of?
The township has a comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
This property is part of that comprehensive plan. That gives us certain requirements, which we are meeting under any circumstances, unless they change it, which is good, okay? And sometimes you have more leeway than others. When you have a comprehensive plan, you've got to follow that comprehensive plan. It's what requires us to build the property, for example, close to Old York Road. But the redevelopment we're talking about, that comes out of the zoning code. And that merely says when you have a non-conforming use. That's why I said I think the way it's written and it's contradictory, I would hardly call taking R4, which is largely used with gravel and parking and trucks, and paving it and calling that a redevelopment. And that's the argument that I'm going to be making on, because I think it's a helpful thing.
Okay, I didn't know if you were talking about, I didn't know if you were talking about a particular project or anything like that. Okay, who wants the mic?
Right next to you.
I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I hope, we have been fair to you guys. But the overwhelming, what I hear from these folks here is these people have been subjected to unsafe driving down the streets where our kids play. And probably our concern should be directed, for asking for your help, Mrs. Sanchez, in doing something, because no one's been hit yet that I'm aware of, but that could happen tomorrow, and then it's too late. And I think speed bumps, and again, I think this was just a venue for us to voice our opinion or our concerns, and probably should be directed to the township, that you don't have any real say in it. but-
Maybe we can be, maybe we can create something that should have been created earlier, because as I gather, I think you don't necessarily dislike anything we're doing, but you're concerned about the parking.
The additional traffic.
I mean, sorry, about the traffic. And you've got a traffic problem right now. And so maybe we can be someone who can help actually alleviate that, which is why I keep using the word alleviating, working in conjunction with you and in working in conjunction with Commissioner Sanchez to the extent that it's possible to actually make something that is a problem now better.
But I think what we would like would be guidance from yourself as far as what next steps we could take. I mean, it's horrifying to see people driving 35, 40 miles an hour texting, and you got kids playing baseball on the side of the street. It's a tragedy waiting to happen. So. Certainly speed bumps would resolve it like that.
That would be a nice gesture. We offer. But they don't know that. What?
I don't really want to put them in that spot. We offered them.
You work with us then. Okay, thank you.
I know Ben will tell you, to the extent that we have mentioned to him that obviously we would be in favor of that. As Sean was telling me, some other townships have had problems with it because of their snow plows. I don't know if that's the reason Abington doesn't allow it.
One of the cited reasons all the time. That's, down by me, that's one of the issues.
So, again, it's not an issue that we can control, but to the extent that we can work together with you to whatever the appropriate response to alleviate the issue is something we of course would be in favor of and would work with you and the residents in the township and on.
I don't know how this happened, but if you get off of the boulevard at Broad Street lately, all of a sudden street bumps showed up. And actually smart move because people like me were going way too fast to get to Broad Street. But again, we're willing to work with you. We get it. You've got a problem. That problem's there whether we're there or not. But if we can help alleviate it, that's a good thing.
And ma'am, to what we talked about before, this meeting, as I said, in advance of the zoning hearing, which again, the one issue we're talking about tonight is not really next week's issue. We'll continue to have these meetings. As Ben will tell you, we've met. We're going to meet with the Shade Tree Commission. We're going to meet with the Economic Development Committee. We will try and have as open and as transparent a process as possible as we move through this. And while the zoning hearing board is coming up next week, the issues that are of the most interest are the ones that we will be dealing with over the next 6, 8, 12 weeks. And we will have time to have this open. And I know a few of you have reached out directly to me based on the flyer. You reached out through our company. You called. to email or to get in touch with any questions. Ben is commissioner, he forwards everything to me. We will not be shy about communicating with you if there are specific questions, if there are things. I can't promise I'll get back to you within an hour, but hopefully, based on the few of you that did reach out to me this week and we got back to you right away, within a couple of days, we will continue to have that open dialogue as we go through the process.
And I know some of you thanked us, but I think more than anything else, I'd like to thank the commissioner as well as you.
Another question in the back.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. So I think you do have a nice building, and I think at the end of this, maybe many of the neighbors will say this will be a good neighbor. You're obviously a caring person, and so that is, a real possible outcome here. The one thing that I feel a little perplexed about is I feel like you're telling them, don't come to this meeting a week from now.
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, but you're kind of saying that's just for comfort.
No.
Your real concern.
Let me stop you right there. We're not asking you not to come at all.
Yeah, let me finish my thoughts, because.
We'd like you to say nice things, but
This is, if the decision as a group, or whoever feels that way, if they don't want it, this is the most important meeting, and having only 1 week to prepare and understand the difference of variances and so on. Mark Pancalma said you need a variance. You're saying that if it gets to that and they don't go with the special exception, you have a hardship because it's already a parking area and you're grandfathered into that, and they're taking parking away and so on. So, and by the way, to your question before, I think you have to declare your hardship when you apply, right? That has to be declared, so you can't.
Well, we have filed an alternative.
So what I'm saying is when you look at that parking lot, that's not just a parking lot, that's a house with more parking than most people have, and so they use the excess area for parking.
Actually,
You're redeveloping.
I'm sorry, just to say one thing, that parking field is not accessible by that duplex. It's actually part of the current, what was the construction company.
So that's part of that.
Yes, it's
Part is the houses you're taking.
just a very small piece of that.
Developing that site, which puts a very different spin on the fact that it's already there and it's grandfathered in. It's very different. You're redeveloping it.
No, we're not.
So the people have a right to understand that they can protest that if Mark Panickel, and he's a pretty smart guy, he's been around for a lot of years, okay? And if Mark Panickel thinks that you need to go for a variance, these people need to understand that you need a hardship, and I think your hardship is probably not quite solid. So I think they need to know that that's a really important meeting. On the other hand, they may want to say, you guys are going to be good neighbors, and we're going to let that go, and we'll go to the planning commission and work on the traffic and all of that. So that's all I want to say.
I'm going to let Marcel address the zoning variance and the hardship issues, but what I was trying to say before, and if it was misconstrued, I apologize. What I was trying to state was that if we show up to next week's meeting, when we show up to next week's meeting, and this hasn't changed because it's only a week from now, it's not because we said, we don't care what the township thinks. It's because this particular issue is part of the planning phase. It's the land development process. It comes in with the other pieces Sean mentioned. What I wanted to mention was that next week's conversation is not about where the curb cuts go. So if at the zoning hearing board meeting, you don't see any changes to the sketch plan and the site map and the aerial views, it's not because we heard you tonight and said, doesn't matter. It's because that is going to be addressed as part of the planning process that is continuing for another 4, 6, 8 weeks until we present that. And it is something we will work on. What I wanted to get across was that next week is about the zoning and the use of the property. This particular issue we're talking about that you've raised as far as egress and the traffic is not something that will be solved. And so if you don't see a change to these drawings, it's not because we ignored it, it's because it is a larger process. It's not something that we can just change overnight. It involves meeting with the township, meeting with, with PennDOT, meeting with other groups. So we will take all of it under consideration, but you may not see that reflected in drawings next week. And that's really why I wanted to stress that piece.
Somebody asked earlier about trees. Frankly, we don't know how many trees we are, and we will get until we know what our zoning rights are.
Shade Tree Commission.
Shade Tree Commission, that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
I've been educated.
Okay, so, but it's a process, and so that you don't misunderstand, all meetings are public.
Just, I hate to see living things destroyed.
I'm sorry, what?
I hate to see living things destroyed.
I understand.
Especially as they're my very favorite things in the whole world.
Fair enough.
And I've enjoyed looking at them for the last 10 years. I hardly knew there was a construction company across the street because those trees were like a green curtain.
I got you. We understand. And again, that will be addressed at the appropriate time in the appropriate manner, and you'll be part of that discussion. Next week is pretty legal in terms of what we're doing. We urge you to be there. Hopefully, we may be able to answer some issues, or at least move in the direction of some issues. I'm not sure. You'll have the right to say whatever you want. Hopefully, we've tried to answer most of your questions, and at least you feel that we're going to be responsible, and you'll take it from there. I can't tell you what to say, how to say it, or what to do, and we'll never discourage you from coming to a public meeting. I will tell you that, and I'm saying this as a citizen, what happened here tonight, largely because of Commissioner Sanchez, is unusual. I appreciate the fact that you said we've only had a week to prepare. Most of the time, you have no time to prepare. To have a meeting. I'm sorry, what?
I said, you don't have a longhorn next to your house because there were only 2 neighbors taking the meeting. And when I heard that, I got all the neighbors together. And now there's no longhorn right through where you were.
Well, actually, that was, I'll be blunt. I mean, I was involved in that. Apparently, you have inside information. But I was very honest with my client because I was also a neighbor, and my neighbors knew that. And the neighbors had legitimate reasons for being concerned. Commissioner was part of that process. He's aware of it. And the developer decided not to build something there in terms of Longhorns. Here's the problem. Honestly, something's going to get built there, and sometimes what you get is not better than what you turn down. I don't have an answer for that. Okay? And when I said to this gentleman over here, part of all of our problems is, and all of our strengths, is that we live in a community that's old. And things that were built, quite frankly, in the old days pretty haphazardly. And it worked because you didn't have the congestion. And now all of a sudden you got all the congestion and you're trying to make it work, and that creates all kinds of problems. So all I can tell you is that we are committed to try to give you the best project possible. We are committed to trying to alleviate as many of your concerns as humanly possible. We probably won't be able to alleviate all of them, certainly can't cure all of them. There's no way in the world that we can cure. I know how to cure, I know how to cure all of your traffic problems of your street on both Guernsey and Eckert. All you have to do is put a wall up and the street ends and you have a no outlet street. You would also have a huge outcry, probably amongst yourselves as well. So those are the kinds of issues. But I got it, and as Jeff said, this is a process. We want you to be as proud of your community as we want to be proud of it, and be proud of it. We want to, again, everything we want to do is, there's no benefit for us to make something that looks bad, okay, that doesn't help the community move forward. But I'm asking you just to use your common sense and understand, we're all bound by certain things that are here now that we can't change. You know, there were old buildings there that worked and were probably very nice. When I first moved here 31 years ago, I used to go there, I buy flowers there, parking, by the way. Talk about old Sokonasak, there was a nice lady, young lady who owned a flower shop. And I used to go there, okay, to buy flowers for my wife every week like I do. And I stopped going there because it was too dangerous to get into the parking lot. That's the truth. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons a lot of those stores closed, was because it was difficult to get into and to get out of. Okay, now you have empty stores, and you have different issues. So that's just a normal cycle of life. We want you to be proud of what we're building, and hopefully you can.
I'm very concerned that once this comes to pass and you have construction and demolition and trucks full of rubble and stuff, they're all going to go down our streets, aren't they? Construction vehicles nonstop, pretty much, during the process, correct?
You know, that's a very good question. I will try to get you an answer. Is that fair enough? That's something that, I mean, we may have to talk to some contractors and to see how they feel. But I can't give you a better answer than that because I honestly don't know. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all for coming out and hearing us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
I'm going on vacation next week with my kindergarten.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Long Beach Island.
Good.